Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I am here with Jason.
Hey, everyone.
I'd ask how you're doing, but I already know how you're doing.
You know, I'm frustrated as fuck, man.
Fucking pissed, man.
We've been having technical issues.
We did.
Little peek behind the curtain here.
Yeah, had to troubleshoot. We had a connection issue with our drivers for our audio interface, and Jason, man, he is pissed now, just storming about the studio.
I have a very love-hate relationship with technology.
He stormed to the bookshelf and started picking up books because, you know, you just open them and they work.
Fucking A, analog, man. Never steer you wrong.
Well, speaking of people that get pissed and worked up into a fervor, our movie today is Kichiku, Banquet of the Beasts from 1997, directed by Kazuyoshi Kumakiri. You picked this.
I did.
And in a rare treat, this is a cult Japanese film that I had never seen nor was very much aware of.
Yeah, I've been holding this in my back pocket for a while now.
Secret weapon. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But first, we're going to do all our usual stuff. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. And we are part of the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, and we love it. And there's all kinds of awesome other shows you can go listen to, fill your ear holes with. I'm going to shout them out because I haven't in a while. The Movie Defenders. Those guys are pretty cool. I like that.
It's a cool premise.
They always try to keep a positive spin on everything, even if it's a maligned movie or something, you know, that generally, like, everyone would say, oh, no, that sucks.
We don't always do that.
We don't always do that, and that's cool. Everyone has their own way, and I have a ton of respect for that style, man, so I love it. So go give them some love. Check them out if you've never given them a listen before. What have you been watching, man? Come on, just tell me.
I have not been watching a lot of movies lately. I must admit.
Now I'm going to rage.
But I have watched some interesting things. First of all, I've already mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again in case you're not watching it. Fucking watch Shogun. It's amazing. It's got one more episode left.
Ooh.
It's very well done. Yeah, I can't say enough great things about it. Check it out.
Well, we're talking about TV shows.
Like, if you like Game of Thrones, you will dig this because it's got the political intrigue. It's got, you know, some sword fights and some action and romance and backstabbing.
Cool.
Figuratively and literally. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Are you watching Fallout?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
I haven't started that yet. I did watch RoboDoc, the creation of RoboCop, which is another one of those big, like, 6-8 part...
like epic documentaries.
Documentaries, which I'm such a sucker for this shit. I love it. I eat it up. It's like the Never Sleep Again documentary and Crystal Lake Memories. Memory, the alien one. Have you watched that one?
I have not, no.
It's not quite as long, but it's also very good.
It's not quite as long, but one I'm really partial to is I think it's Lost Souls, and it's the one about Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau.
That's very good.
And just the fucking insanity.
It's much more interesting than that piece of shit movie is, that's for sure. There's also, like, In Search of Tomorrow and In Search of Darkness.
I've actually never watched any of those.
Oh, really? You should check them out, man. They're good. But yeah, this is it's over 4 hours, and it talks all about one of our favorite movies, RoboCop. We just talked about a Verhoeven film, Flesh and Blood.
RoboCop, I'm going to say genre exposure approved.
Damn right.
Seal of approval.
It is so fucking, I love this movie so much. And the doc's good. They talk to pretty much everybody involved. There's some funny stories. Like, apparently Peter Weller was really always in character. Like, he demanded to be called Robo if he was in the suit. And there's this one part during the shootout in the old steel mill where, like, one of the effects guys is up there with Peter Weller alone, right? And they're waiting for shit to happen. And the effects dude's, like, eating some Oreos. He's got, like, a package of Oreos, right? So Peter Weller looks at him and says, Robo wants an Oreo. And this dude, this effects guy, he's like, he doesn't have any patience for those actors who are always in character. And he's like, dude, it's just you and me, Peter, all right? If you, Peter, ask me for an Oreo, I will give you one. And then Peter Weller's like, Robo wants an Oreo.
When he starts going through, like, the arrest protocols on him.
Right. And according to this guy, like, they had to stop, and someone had to go up there and feed Peter Weller Oreos before he would film. And then they cut to Peter Weller, and he's like, I don't fucking remember that. That didn't happen. Don't trust that guy. So there's lots of fun little things like that.
Oh, man.
It's well worth watching. Like, if you love RoboCop, and you should check it out. I think it's streaming for free on Amazon. So,
oh, nice.
You know.
Cool. Okay.
How about you, man? What have you been watching there?
Nothing else on your end?
Nah, that's it.
Cool. Well, I want to give a follow-up about something I watched last time. Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV.
Right.
They popped back with that extra episode.
Okay.
So they had some more people. Pretty good. It actually, like, they really took, I think they sat back and listened to the criticisms, kind of took their lumps and then said, like, okay, let's try to address those.
Right.
They got in more people that wanted to talk, which was cool. But the big thing is they went back on some of the stuff that I criticized them for glossing over last time. And they actually sort of drilled back in and said, like, okay, can we, like, talk about this more now and look into it? And the key point, I thought, was they went back and examined the whole, the Brian Peck dude, the, actual convicted pedophile,
right.
Child predator guy, and how he got a job at Disney after all of that happened. And I was like, you remember last time I was like, dude, how the fuck does this happen?
Sure.
And then you don't explain it. So they explained that now, and I thought it was, it's sad but interesting, and basically it boils down to a law that exists, that to my knowledge is still in effect now, which is that if it's a children's program, and as part of the production of that show, you mandate that the parents have to be on set when the children are filming, you do not in turn have to run a background check on anybody that's in the production.
What?
And so that is the loophole that allowed a convicted...
You get a job at fucking McDonald's to do a background check.
Yeah,
on
I know.
You.
I've rarely ever not had a background check for a job.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
It's insane.
That's fucked up.
So that definitely needs to
That's
change.
an industry built around protecting each other, you know, and other predators and shit.
So that was fucking angering, but...
that's bullshit.
I don't know that it would bump my star rating up for the doc, but it was good on them. And again, I think, like, regardless of, like, if you loved it or hated it, I think it needed to be a documentary that existed, needed to shine a light on all this stuff.
Right. I didn't know that guy he played Ricky in Better Off Dead.
Oh.
The dude that it's about, Dan Schneider,
Dan
whatever
Schneider,
his name is. Yeah, he was. Have you seen Better Off Dead?
Yeah.
The John Cusack movie, which a minor classic. I fucking love that movie. But yeah, he was Ricky, who was, strangely enough, a sex pest.
Well, that was one of the things when they talked about like a lot of the stuff he did. Like it came out like he never like actually like preyed on anyone that was known or documented or stuff. But a lot of his stuff just came off as very like sex pesty.
Yeah,
where he would kind of like call in like the women on the writer room and like pitch jokes at them that were like lewd for no reason.
Right.
And want them to like say certain lines just for his own amusement and just kind of a shitty way to be. So
that's pretty shitty.
But moving on to better things. I got to circle back for this one because I skipped it last time to bump up a few other things. I went out to the theater with Tiffany on a date night. And
what? You didn't invite me?
No. Date night, man. No third wheels for this one. Oh. And we checked out Love Lies Bleeding, the next film from Rose Glass. Kristen Stewart, Katie O'Brien.
I've heard good things.
If you don't know, it's sort of like a small town, like Southwest crime thriller. But yeah, it's like this. Kristen Stewart plays this like reclusive gym manager, and she meets this other woman named Jackie, who's kind of just like this drifter who's like aspiring to be a bodybuilder and go to Vegas and win a big like bodybuilding contest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of just about their lives and their budding relationship with one another and the weird like small town politics of where this gym is located. And there's like this kind of like crime boss old man kingpin dude who turns out to be Kristen Stewart's character's father. Mm-hmm. And he sort of runs the show. And we get into like I think Kristen Stewart's character is called Lou. She has like this darker past where she used to work for her father, and it's implied she maybe like assassinated people and
Whoa.
is like a really trained like good like gun user and killer and stuff, and
just like an enforcer.
And she's tried to like separate herself from that life and lead a normal life, and just like one little accident after another kind of spirals things out of control, and the next thing you know, they're drawn up in this whole underground crime world and trying to like fight for their own survival and navigate through all the like twists and turns of that.
Sounds cool.
Super epic, super well shot, well acted. Everybody in it's like fucking amazing. Great story, great aesthetics, great visuals.
I know we're fans of the director's first film.
Yes, Saint Maud. That was the first film we ever did on this show that I had to do a retraction of my review and rate it higher.
Yep.
And this one, man, it was everything that was great about Saint Maud, but not in like a horror film, but just in a more of like a crime film, but just done like bigger and better and more awesome and even better put together, and like everything just clicked so well.
Nice.
And it does this A24 thing where it's like there's a weird supernaturally element in the film, but it's never implied like, is it really happening or is it like a perspective thing?
Right.
As the film progresses, it does get into a little bit of like kind of like drug addiction of the time and stuff, and Jackie gets into doing like steroids to like bulk up for the bodybuilding competition, and so it gets a little into like how that can be a problem and like the whole like roid rage thing and stuff. But there's distinct scenes where when she gets angry, she actually literally like bulks up.
Whoa.
And gets like more and more jacked and big.
Holy shit.
And at the end, they go super over the top with it, and it was really crazy. But it was cool, and it was like very poetic almost in a way. And they did this thing where it had one of those like airy fairy A24 endings where it was like
someone smiling at the camera.
It could just go out on this one moment, and you're like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah.
And it almost felt a little like Saint Maud, but then it has like a coda it comes back to that kind of snaps you back to reality and gets you like a final like bearing on what's going on.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Cool.
I loved it, man. I was like 5 stars all the way on it. Can't say enough good things. It's out of theaters now, but it should hit streaming soon, and it's definitely one to circle back for if you like crime films, if you like just the general A24 oeuvre, I'm going to say.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart used to be pretty annoying, but I'm coming around to her these days because she's picking stranger and more
dude, like
interesting
she's
projects.
amazing in this, and then she was slight in her role in Crimes of the Future, but really good.
Yeah, she was
the whole
memorable.
time. Yeah. So yeah, I fucking loved it.
Cool.
Only good things.
Nice. I'll check it out when it streams.
And speaking of only good things,
oh,
may we progress to our film, I suppose.
Does that mean you like it?
We'll see.
Do you need more poison? I mean, water.
Oh man, I feel worse every drink I take. Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure. I'm Jason. Dustin has died, so I'm now continuing this.
It's my show now.
We're gonna watch all my movies. All right, so Kichiku, Banquet of Beasts, 1997. Kazuyoshi Kumakiri.
Kichiku is such a cute sounding word for a movie like this, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's feels weird. The Japanese title in full is Kichiku Dai Inkai. Makes it sound pretty cool.
It does.
Where do you want to start with this? Okay, so what genre is it?
The old IMDb declares it is drama and horror. Which...
Fair.
Yeah, sure.
The horror tag is like, I'm going to say slight on this one.
Yeah, because there is a lot of gore, especially toward the end. But, yeah, I mean, horror... there are horrific images.
Sure.
And some of the relationships are pretty horrific. Because horror isn't just about, ooh, I'm a killer, I'm going to get you, you know.
That's true.
So I think it applies.
So Letterboxd, I looked at other places and nowhere else really even talks about the film too much, but Letterboxd had the tag of crime film. I think that's pretty apt.
It is, and also it's interesting in its absence of actual crime.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the premise of the movie, okay?
Sure.
I'll just read the description in IMDb. While the leader is in jail, his leftist group is controlled by his girlfriend, but her leadership lacks conviction and perspective. When the leader commits suicide in prison, despair and confusion rule the group, and revenge and violence erupts in a graphic way.
Yep. And I think the first thing we need to put a little context on is it says leftist group, and so there's some sort of political angle in this. And so we go, where is this coming from? What is this about? And boy, do I have some notes to share with everyone about that.
All right.
Which we will get into a little bit, but I want to say also, I didn't think like calling it a political film was quite apt because like there's an absence of the crime in this crime film, there's also an absence of politics
Yeah.
in this political film.
We never, ever hear any of their political views.
Yeah, we don't know any of their views, their goals.
I think that's the point.
One time someone mentions the word communism
Yeah.
in reference to a proper title of the name of another group.
Right, another group even.
That's maybe possibly aligned with them or could be aligned with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice, I'm going to say.
I think that's part of the point, and we'll get to that. But a little background, I guess. The director, Kazuyoshi Kumakiri, was in college when he made this movie. This was his graduation thesis. They were told to make an 1.5 hour long movie, and by God, he did. It took him 2 years, so he actually had to stay on an extra year at university. I think he went to Osaka Arts University. But yeah, he found some people to make it with him, and he got it done. So it is a low budget, fly by the seat of your pants
student film.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yep, it was known to be made on a super low budget. I've seen references here or there that mention something like $30K, but I don't know how accurate that is.
That sounds high.
Yeah, that sounds high. So I could never source down an exact number. He's gone on to more films and more success. In 2001, he made the film Hole in the Sky. That had in leading roles Susumu Terajima and Yuriko Kikuchi. In 2004, he did a film Green Mine, Metal Bats, which screened and did well at the International Film Festival Rotterdam. He did sketches of Kaitan City in 2010. In 2012, he did Blazing Famiglia, which had a famous comedian in Japan, Yoshimi Tokui. And then his 2014 film, My Man, got the Golden George Prize for Best Film at the 36th Moscow International Film Festival.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm glad he's gone on to some success and accolades.
Yep. And last year, actually, 2023, he dropped 2 films in 1 year.
Wow, okay.
So he's stepping into that
Instead
realm.
of 1 film in 2 years, it was 2 films.
He's stepping into that realm of, your Mikes or your Sonos, where they're like, hey, let's just make a few films in a year. That was #Manhole, which I mentioned last time.
Oh, yeah.
And a film called Yoko, which I went and looked up the trailer for #Manhole. Dude, it seems pretty fun. I'm going to be honest.
The premise is cool.
Yeah, because it's like a dude goes out drinking with his buddies. He falls in a manhole the night before his wedding, and he's stuck down there and can't get out.
I love that shit.
And he's trying to use social media to get someone to come save him. And it evolves into this thing to where he uses AI to make like a fake girl profile account because he knows that if it's a woman, more people are going to care about the situation. And then it also has like a mystery angle where maybe one of his friends was the one that like knocked him into the manhole. And there's some someone's like covetous of his relationship drama going on too.
Interesting. That's
Weird
fun.
Fucking premise, man. But okay.
I love movies where people are trapped and have to get out. Those are fucking amazing.
So I don't know. Maybe we circle back for that one day.
Cool.
But, okay, let me dig into the dirt here. I think we need this before we go forward.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep this super broad because there's so much we could go in on this, and also there's other films that kind of talk about this time too. So I think that this is a topic we can maybe even come back to. So this term we're gonna do is the New Left, and in Japan that referred to a diverse array of 1960s leftist movements. That, similar to their counterparts in the Western New Left, adopted a more radical political stance compared to the established Old Left, which in the case of Japan was emblematized by the Japanese Communist Party and the Japan Socialist Party. So after emerging in the lead up to the 1960 Anpo protests against the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, which is a big deal.
Right. Basically U.S. occupation, military forces,
right.
That kind of thing.
The movement grew and diversified before climaxing with the Zenkyoto movement, which barricaded dozens of Japanese universities in 1968 through 1969. And now these are the same student protests we have talked about before. When we did Avalon, Mamoru Oshii, he actually lived through that time, and he was in school when those student protests were going on. And he actually took part in some of the protests, and the events of that and his experiences there have colored a lot of the stories he has told in film.
Right.
And it's even, I think it's one of the anime films he worked on, Jinro, the Wolf Brigade. It has some of these protests at the start of the film where there's a bomber that's trying to sneak through and do a surprise suicide bombing. And that's actually kind of based on one of the protests he was at as far as the layout and the way the police were acting to people and stuff.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was a very impactful thing that kind of resonated through a lot of creatives and like the media and stories they ended up telling. But much like its counterpart in the West, in the 1970s, the Japanese New Left became more known for kind of like violent internal splits and acts of terrorism, which caused the movement's influence to begin to wane.
Right.
Yes. And so there's one prominent person we should talk about in relation to this film, and that is Hiroko Nagata. She's sometimes also referred to as Yoko Nagata. I'm not sure why. I guess it's like a mix-up or something. But she was a Japanese leftist revolutionary and terrorist who was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. She was convicted of murdering or participating in the murders of fellow members of the United Red Army, or URA. And this was doing a group purge in Gunma Prefecture in February of 1972. During the purge, Nagata, acting as the vice chairman, directed others in the killing of 12 members of the group by beatings or by forced exposure to the frigid winter air temperatures, which they were kind of like hid out on a mountain because they had like retreated from the array of like the police looking for them.
Much like what happens in this
Yes,
film.
which we're going to see this mirrored into the film because I think a lot of this film was based on the story of this woman.
Right.
And during all of this, also a civilian who was not a member of the URA but was present, was also killed. And then she was arrested shortly after, tried, convicted, and sentenced to death for her participation in the killings. And she awaited in prison for a long time, and there was a lot of back and forth of like trying to get that commuted to something else and changed. And ultimately, she died in prison of brain cancer in 2011.
Wow, that was a long time.
And clearly, I think the lead we're going to talk about in here, it's Masami, right?
Masami is the character.
Played by Samiko Mikami.
Yeah, she's crazy.
She's crazy. And one of the first things we learn about her, we'll get into the plot in a minute. I just want to set up all this background stuff. So she's very promiscuous in this film. Kind of sultry, sort of.
She uses her sex as powerful leverage.
Yes, she does. Unlike our lead here, though, Nagata was noted as unattractive. And allegedly she had it harshly out for the other female members of their group, especially those that were attractive or they themselves promiscuous.
Okay.
Other members of the group, speaking of her, said that she was physically unattractive and infertile due to having Graves' disease.
Oh, wow.
And then this incident, this whole like purge they had on the mountain, the aftermath of this led into another big sort of like historical event in Japan known as the Asama Sanso incident. So that was where survivors of this group were fleeing through the mountains, and they found a mountain lodge. Then they stormed in and took the proprietress hostage. And it became this big, it was almost like, you compare it to something like maybe the Branch Davidians over here. They were holed up in this lodge. They got surrounded by the cops. It became this huge media spectacle where like they brought in the news and they like live broadcast the goings on, and it was like a long standoff that lasted from February 19th to February 28th, 1972. And the actual final day when they finally, like, I guess they went through a whole rigmarole of, like, you know, surrender us the hostage, negotiations, and they would never do anything. And ultimately, on the final day of this thing, they had just decided to storm the place and try to take them by any force they could. And that actual final day was live televised, and it was like a 10-hour long broadcast.
Oh, wow.
Super huge. And in the end of that, 2 police officers were killed in the assault. The hostage was rescued, and it turned out that in the end they were very nice to her. They didn't harm her in any way. They just kept her locked up as leverage for the police.
That's something.
And the radicals were taken into custody. And this was one of the big blows that kind of took all these leftist movements and cast them in a very dark light, and they lost a lot of kind of the momentum and steam they had been building up to this point, because suddenly all their talks of equality and peace got stamped into we slaughtered half our members, then stormed into a random place and abducted a woman and fought it out with the cops. So
kind of funny how that happens.
Yeah. And the ratings were insane for this. So, like, the NHK's coverage got a 50.8% viewership, and it peaked at 89.7 at the height when they were storming in the building.
It's not surprising.
Vehicle traffic slowed to a noticeably lighter amount in Tokyo because so many people were staying in to watch it.
All right.
And it's alleged that the media coverage of this event is why Instant Cup noodles became so popular, because all the cops there were eating it because it was the only thing that could get up there really quickly to have a bite.
Wow.
Before they would go back and forth with them.
That's some advertising.
And if you want more about this actual standoff incident, Koji Wakamatsu made a film in 2007 about it, called United Red Army. And it's actually acclaimed. It won the Japanese Eyes Best Picture Award that year at the Tokyo International Film Festival.
Cool.
So that's a lot of background, and we could go over it for forever. I had much more notes where I went point by point of the whole siege and everything else, and I was like, this is too much.
Yeah,
So
you can go down a big rabbit hole there. It's its own thing.
And I'll put some links where if you want to read more kind of about these leftist movements in Japan of that time and kind of how that all started and chart it out, you can do that on your own time.
Cool.
So our film opens
In prison.
in prison.
Yes, we have a prisoner named Aizawa, who's giving another inmate who is about to be freed a woman's dress.
Mm-hmm.
An inmate that is being freed, his name is Fujiwara. And Aizawa tells him that the girl Masami is in charge of his gang.
Yep.
Now that he's in prison. So go to Masami and join her. And
he says, I've written to her letters, and I've told her about you. She knows you're, on the level with us.
Right. So then we get some opening credits, and it shows a bunch of revolutionaries and protesters and stuff like that.
Yeah, it looks like they're using real footage, maybe even.
I believe because Kumakiri was inspired by real footage of this stuff that he found at the college.
Oh.
This is what inspired him to make the movie.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's several sequences where they kind of cut to these. Mm-hmm. We just get flashes of what's going on.
Yeah. So we meet a couple of the characters who are part of this group. And we never get the name of the group either.
No.
We never get an idea of what this group ideals are, what they stand for, what they do. Nothing. No. So we get, let's see, there's kind of a thin, nerdy-looking dude. He's Sugihara.
Played by Toshiyuki Sugihara.
And his roommate is a guy named Kumagaya.
Played by Shigeru Bokuda.
And he's like this, he got long hair, he's playing folk guitar, seems kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And it's obvious that Sugihara has a crush on him, you know. I mean, maybe a man crush, maybe something more, I don't know, but he's definitely enthralled by him. We've all had that one friend, I think, especially when we were younger, that we thought was just the coolest, you know.
Yeah, okay. No, I agree with you, actually. I think that's true for most people.
I mean, I was usually that friend that everyone thought was so cool. No, not really. Anyway, right. So, and he's talking to his mom or a relative or someone, and he's, talking about how he's got his new roommate, and they're doing good, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, life is good.
Sure. But they're living in, I think it's supposed to be a dormitory.
Yeah, it seems like that.
And that's actually where it was shot. It was shot in an actual dormitory at the Osaka Arts University.
I was thinking a campus dormitory or even a near campus apartment complex kind of deal.
Yeah. And then we meet Masami, who's been spoken of before, and a man named Yamane. And they are going at it.
Yeah.
In a very unflattering, matter-of-fact way.
Yeah, a lot of dude butt in this. And
I'll mention the music's kind of used sparingly in this movie, but when it's used, it's really good. Because it's very percussion-driven, and it does a good job of getting you,
So wait, there was music in this movie?
There was some music in this movie. Not a lot. Not a lot.
That's I'm definitely going to go ahead and put that down as one of my criticisms.
Okay.
Is
See, that didn't bother me because it added to the whole cinema verite style for me.
Okay.
I was totally cool with that. It made it more like a documentary than a movie. So yeah, they're getting it on.
And we know it's simulated because there's a scene where and I didn't even know if I was going to talk about this, but it is pretty funny that while the camera's panning, he lifts up too high, and you see his junk and everything.
Yeah, right. Which I'm surprised wasn't more. I mean, it's kind of dark, but I'm surprised.
You see it for a second.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So they get done, and then she starts like telling him, like, you better not tell Aizawa about this, or he better not find out. And then he's like, hey, you're the one that told me to have sex with you.
She's a boss.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she basically chases him off. And everything in this movie looks very kind of dirty and realistic too. Probably because it kind of was, because they had no money and they were just
using whatever cameras they had.
Yeah, and it really sells the movie. Like I said, it gives it that cinema verite look. It looks very authentic. But there is some friction with Yamane and the rest of the group here.
Yeah. He kind of wants to like make the call of like, hey, Aizawa's not coming back. We need to
he
do something.
He doesn't seem to worship Aizawa as much as the others do. And meanwhile, we get some scenes with a couple of guys that got white scarves around their faces and sunglasses, and they're being chased by police. At least we hear the sirens. We don't actually see any police. They didn't have the budget for that. They're like dumping their clothes in the trash can, and we'll see them again in a minute because they are part of this gang, this group.
It seems like they kind of like have a little hideout place, and then she sort of sends them out to steal money or...
Yeah, they like rob the post office. And Yamane is like questioning this, saying that, hey, this isn't something Aizawa. We're not thieves. We're not in it for the money, And you're thinking, well, what are you in it for?
Which I think Masami's thing is like, we need like money and food to function, and...
Yeah. Plus, it's the hypocrisy. They want money. They want and need money too.
Yeah.
Despite all of their whatever.
Oh wow! You mean it doesn't work?
Yeah. Apparently not.
Huh.
But he's like berating everyone, and he realizes everyone's against him. He can't get anyone on his side.
One of them, it's one of the other guys. He even challenges him. He's like, "Well, if you had heard Aizawa talk more, you would understand the way that we understand."
Yeah. I think that was Kumigawa, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because Kumigawa and Sugihara show up.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where he's going to leave the group, right? He's pissed off at everybody, and he's dressing, and it's so awkward because they're all just like watching him get dressed.
Yes.
Because this entire time he's just been in his underwear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those guys who robbed the post office come back, and they didn't even get that much money.
No. Didn't grab as much as they thought they were going to get to.
No.
But beggars can't be choosers, so...
But also at this time, Fujiwara shows up from the beginning.
I don't like it because everyone's kind of just like, who the hell are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah, and Masami's, oh yeah, Aizawa told me about you. Come join us.
And he's like weirdly stoic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get the feeling he's seen some shit, maybe in prison or something.
Because they have like a little like celebration kind of thing. And,
the first Inkai party.
Yes, the first banquet.
We get a title card. Yeah.
And everyone's drinking and dancing and having a good time. And he's kind of just sitting off to himself, just like sipping a drink. And
yeah. And like Masami's wearing like an Oni mask. And dancing around like crazy. Yeah, and Kumigawa also was kind of like sitting off by himself and doesn't seem that impressed. And he's like a big Aizawa worshiper too, we find out. And this was a good part. Good use of music here, I thought, because it's kind of very traditional, percussion and stuff.
But I think what we're forgetting to talk about is the like 15-minute segment of them just eating and the really loud chewing effects.
Yeah, all the slurping and stuff. Yeah, we get some of that too. But Masami takes Kumigawa away from the others, saying that she's got to talk to him. And she's like saying, oh, you're not happy, but you can't stay that way. And she's like groping him the entire time, obviously trying to get him to
and he's
have
like
sex
pulling
with her.
away from her.
Right. He keeps like, it's a pretty funny scene because it's kind of a shot angled down at them. And it's a static shot locked down. And he just keeps scooting away from her until he can't anymore.
I like it because he backs up into like a blanket and then he puts that over himself.
Yeah. And she just keeps groping and groping. And eventually he gives in and they do it.
And it's awkward because we go back to the party and they can hear them fucking back there.
Yeah. And they're all just quiet and listening. And we find out that Masami is the only girl in this group. So then we get later on, Kumagaya and Sugihara at a diner. They're talking about Yamane and wondering if he's going to come back to the group. It's obvious that Kumagaya doesn't really care for him, says he's exhausting. And he doesn't even really know Aizawa. Says. And Sugihara hasn't met Aizawa either.
Right, he's kind of just writing on the stories he's heard from everyone else.
Yeah. And Kumagaya says, he'll change your life. Wait till he gets out. And we get some scenes of Aizawa in jail just kind of like sitting there impotently, like doing nothing.
Yeah.
They get a shotgun.
They do, and it comes in like a big like bundle.
Yeah, it's like wrapped in newspaper, and it's kind of, you can't really recognize what it is at first.
It seems like it maybe came from like a florist or something, even like it's wrapped up like plants or flowers.
They go to like a farmer and buy it. Yeah. And Masami is just all about their shotgun. She's like loving on it, like rubbing it and shit.
And they get a katana.
Which Fujiwara seems pretty happy with his katana.
And you can tell the first time he kind of opens it a little bit and clacks it back. It was like, oh man, he knows how to use this.
Yeah. I think Okazaki is the guy who brought the shotgun. So Masami is now having her turn with him that night.
Yeah. And this is where you think they really should have set some rules to this whole setup she's got going on.
I mean, she's having a field day.
I guess.
She's enjoying her power given to her by Aizawa and I guess by her dominance of these men sexually. We see Aizawa back in prison and he's like shaving one night without lather with a straight razor. And we get one of those scenes where they're all munching hungrily, right? Slurping the noodles and shit like that. And then we see Aizawa cutting open his stomach with a straight razor. His guts all spilling out.
Full on like seppuku mode too, just like guts himself.
Yep. Kills himself. And the next scene we get of the gang, they're all very dour. They've obviously gotten the news. Aizawa's dead. Kumagaya and Sugihara leave, and Masami starts getting it on with his stuffed bird head.
Yeah, which is weird.
Like she's orally pleasing it.
Yeah.
Or using it to orally please herself, whatever, and breaks it.
Which is odd.
A little bit. Kumagaya and Sugihara are sitting in their apartment, just sort of quietly drinking beer, like snacking, like on peanuts or something.
This is what you call hanging out.
This is hanging out in 1970s Japan, if you're a leftist radical.
You don't do anything. You just sit around, drink some beers.
Annoyingly tool around on your guitar. But Yamane shows up.
Yeah. He's been away for a while, but he heard about Aizawa.
Yep. And this is when he starts talking about the communist group that he knows about. He says they should join up with them.
Yeah, he says they could link up. It'll strengthen their numbers. That other group has a very charismatic leader. And they can kind of, get back to, doing the good work. Yeah. As it were.
But Kumagaya is like, no, we're going to go back to Masami. We're sticking with her.
Yeah. Aizawa put her in charge, so.
And Yamane's like, that may not be a good idea because I called the police. And Kumagaya takes his bottle and just splits his face fucking wide open with it.
And it's a startling moment because it's the first really hard act of violence.
Yeah,
from
and
one
Kumagaya
person to another.
And he's so calm too.
Yeah.
So Yamane is like cradling his face and crying and shit. And Kumagaya tells Sugihara to call Masami, but bam, she and her goons are already there at the apartment.
Yep.
And they think Kumagaya is in on it, right? Because Yamane is there and shit. But Sugihara is saying, no, it was Yamane. We had nothing to do with it. And we get the information that they killed the police that came to try to arrest them.
So they got to go into hiding.
Yep. And they take Yamane and the rest of them with them.
And they go up into the mountains, which is where we get some more of the parallels with the actual historical event behind this.
Yep. And we get another title card, The Second Inkai Party. They're kicking Yamane's ass. They're off in the forest, up in the mountains. Yep, literally. They tie Kumagaya up on Masami's orders because she doesn't trust him.
Yeah, and this is really like, I don't know. There was no reason not to trust him, I guess. But I mean, I guess it's just her drunk on power. But
Right. I think it's more of a jealousy thing. Yeah, and Sugahara is kind of looking on but does nothing. Okazaki goes apeshit and kicks the fuck out of both of them.
yeah,
And Masami has to hit him with a shotgun to get him to stop.
and eventually, right, they let Kumagai free, and it's kind of like you have to like harm Yamane to prove your loyalty to us.
Well, they don't really set him free. It's Masami asks Kumagaya if he has any good ideas for Yamane, what they should do with Yamane. And he suggests hanging him, hanging him from these trees. And they're fighting and struggling, and Masami accidentally, I think, blows his head off with a shotgun.
Sometimes you just fumble with a gun and just
Sometimes it just goes off.
blow someone's head off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good effect for people who don't have a lot of money. There's a lot of ingenuity.
It's probably the best effect in the film, I think.
Yes. And did you get any vibes from another director during this sequence?
I'm going to say some Wes Craven.
Yeah. Okay. I get that.
Some like Last House on the Left.
I guess I mean more of the effect itself.
Oh. What are you referring to?
Peter Jackson. This is a very,
I see that.
very bad taste, Dead Alive sort of scene. Because the way they shoot it, they kind of zooms in on the gore, and the head split open, the brain's exposed and shit. It reminded me so much of Bad Taste.
See, I got a lot of Wes Craven in this part once they get up into the woods.
Absolutely.
Not just Last House on the Left, but also the films that were kind of inspired by that, like, was it Last House on Dead End Street?
Oh, yeah.
Which is a little more obscure, but that was based on the Manson family murders, which is also a kind of historical thing I would maybe like point to. That it feels like the Manson family at this point.
Yeah.
Where you got the one leader and they're kind of going off the rails.
That was the old David Hess movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. Oh, directed by Deodato.
Which also, connection there, like with Manson, that also is sort of like a radical leftist movement.
True.
That spiraled out of control.
Very true. Oh, and also the sound effects reminded me of Peter Jackson. Because even though he's been shot, you hear all this squelching noises, the brain's just sort of like still spurting blood and shit.
Yeah.
Very Peter Jackson. And everyone's kind of looking on, stunned by this. And Masami begins like digging around in his brains, starts kicking his body. And she's like fucking crazy at this point.
Yeah. Which would make me question her leadership, but...
Yeah. And Kumagaya is all like, okay, set me free. And Masami says no. And she proceeds to cut his dick off with a knife.
Yeah.
Like, she orders Sugahara to hold him, and he does it. Holds his friend, doesn't even...
Which is a sad moment, because it's really where, like, Sugihara has to choose a side.
Yeah.
And I get it. She's the one with the shotgun, so...
Sure. And he's outnumbered and shit, but still. I mean, it's harsh. It's fucking harsh.
And this film joins the ranks of Serpent and the Rainbow and Antichrist and several others.
Yeah. And she cuts it off, and she's laughing and mocking Kumagaya, running around giggling, and this is where she really, like, loses her fucking marbles.
Mm-hmm.
There's another guy who I don't think we ever got a name of. And he's seeing all this, and he fucking just bolts.
Is it Tyra, I think?
That could be.
Yeah.
And Fujiwara goes after him. This scene kind of took a while, the chase through the woods.
It was a little... Like many of the scenes in this film, it was a little too long, I'm going to say.
But we do get some more fun percussion and vocal work in this scene. But the guy falls to the ground, he hurts his leg, and Fujiwara's got his katana, man. Oh, he's so ready to fucking use it, too.
He is.
But nope, another shotgun blast. Okizaki has it now and shoots the dude in the stomach. And he's like holding Masami in front of him, too, almost like she's a prisoner.
Yeah.
I think some time passes.
Yeah, it's an undisclosed amount of time.
It's been a couple of days, I think, at least. Because now they're holed up in this... It looks like an abandoned hospital, or maybe even like a military base of some sort.
Hard to say.
Hard to say. But it's still in the woods, up in the mountains. Because, I mean, they killed the cops. Obviously, they're being being hunted down. So they were just holding up here. It's a cool location, whatever it is, because it's all abandoned and very cool.
It'd be a great third act in a traditional J-horror film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going there to find out whatever, like, backstory piece.
And we see Okazaki, who is screwing Masami again, but she's just laying there. She's like almost catatonic.
She's not into it.
No. And Sugihara gets up and asks if Kugayama has been fed yet. And this scene, to me, was like grosser than any of the gore in the movie. Where he goes and finds Kumagaya. He's all tied up in this old bathtub.
Yeah.
There's like a pool of blood beneath him. Fucker hasn't bled out yet. And he proceeds to feed him a can of green beans.
Yeah.
Like he just opens the can and sets it on the edge of the tub, and then and Kumagaya is just like an animal at this point. Like he's not even saying anything, but he's just like mindlessly eating the green beans, and they're spilling over, and he's like slurping them off.
The sound effects are just off the chain on this one.
This is grosser than like any gore effect ever. Ugh. Oh, so he's eating this can of green beans, all gross and shit. And Sugihara like takes this piece of wood and like strikes Kumagaya's head with it, but it doesn't kill him.
Yeah, because at first I thought like, oh, he's gonna put his friend out of his misery.
Right.
It's like
He's doing a shitty job of it. I can't tell. Is he trying to put him out of his misery, or he's just like,
well, this is our slap dummy now that we just
right?
Yeah.
So then we get another title card, The Last Inkai Party. Masami is painting her face up. Kind of like a geisha.
Yep.
She's got on this kimono and she begins dancing around.
Which that was one of the things that I don't know that they ever draw it to a point or anything, but it's interesting that like there's this moment, and then when she has sort of the like Oni mask, there's a lot of like traditional cultural things tied up to her character.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that means anything or if there's a point in that, because
it could be argued, I think.
Maybe. I don't know. It was an observation I had.
So she's like pretty bonkers. Okazaki takes the opportunity to assault her again. Fujiwara is wandering around. He sees this, leaves.
Yeah, to be so tight with Aizawa, he surprisingly doesn't care a lot about anything.
Right. He sees Sugihara beating Kumagaya. Just leaves. Doesn't faze him. So we cut to a scene of Masami filleting Okazaki.
Yeah.
And she bites his dick off.
Bad move on his part. I mean, you should have saw it coming, bro.
Yeah, right. So he attacks her, stabs her repeatedly in between the legs. And again, it's graphic, but it's not, because of the whole censorship laws and stuff like that. It's everything's sort of like almost artistically done, the way it's framed.
It's maybe not Roman porno levels of like artistry, but
right. No, it's not. No. We see Sugihara. He finally kills Kumagaya by strangling him. Okazaki has the shotgun, which he inserts into Masami. And pulls the fucking trigger and kills her.
Yeah.
Fujiwara comes up to him with a katana, finally gets to use it.
About time.
Cuts Okasaki's fucking hands off, and then his head. Then he proceeds to go outside and slits his own throat with the katana.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. Like I said, a lot tonight, but
it's a real feel-good movie, you know. Something for the whole family.
Do you have any notes about this film?
Not a whole lot. I watched some of the making of on the DVD.
Oh, Mr. Special Features.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some, and it was very much just sort of like them candidly catching moments and stuff like that. And they all seem to have a really good time filming it. Like when they were like fighting with each other, they would all just start busting out laughing. But also, I mean, they were wailing on each other. Like the scenes where they're tied up and being kicked in the woods and stuff. I mean, they had some padding, but I mean, they were fucking kicking them. And there's a scene in the movie where Yamane vomits from all the beating and stuff. Well, they were giving him a bunch of tea. He was drinking a bunch of tea beforehand.
Wow.
And then made himself throw up for the scene. So that's all.
It's a trooper, man.
Extremely realistic. It's all real. It's all done in camera.
Cool.
Yeah.
I turned this up. I'm not gonna read like beat by beat of all of this. I'm just gonna summarize some parts. But there's a great website that used to exist for Japanese cinema called Midnight Eye. I've mentioned it in the past. I have one of their books they published. Some of the leading writers on there were Tom Mez and Jesper Sharp, which are both film critics that I love and I talk about often.
Oh, Jasper.
Old Jasper, as Michael would say. But in 2001, for the Midnight Eye website, Tom Mez got to interview Kumakiri about this film and his next film that came out after. And so there's a lot of good, like, direct, candid conversation about the movie. And so I pulled some of those to share because I thought they were interesting. So
Cool. Yeah.
this is just Kumakiri talking about the film. And he says that Kichiku was a student film. It was my graduation piece, so it was very difficult to get any professional actors. I instead chose actors from my circle of friends, especially people I thought had interesting faces or interesting personalities. Personally, I would prefer to choose a non-professional to a professional who wouldn't do a good job. I like to cast people who I think already have some kind of similar essence to the character that I want them to play. So I chose the cast for the film by audition, and I had the feeling with each of them that there was at least some essence of their character already embodied in them. My way of directing was different to later films. In Kichiku, everyone was a student, so they were difficult to direct, and it was hard to get ideas and any input from them. They were very eager just to have my kind of input, and so my way of directing on that film was very factual. I would simply tell them exactly what they needed to do and how to do it. If I wanted them to look left, I would instruct them to look left. Of course, some of them, he mentions one of them was like more mature and did give some input, but it was one of those things like as he moved into other films, he kind of got the chance to like do more like back and forth, like let them also kind of embody the role out some.
Right.
Then they talk a little bit about how he was born in 1974, but then he chose to focus on these protest movements that were like the 60s and the 70s, and was kind of, questioning that. And Kumakiri said, I don't think it's unusual that my generation would be interested in this kind of topic. My generation is very attracted to the earlier generations because they had so much energy. Today we live in a peaceful world, so this energy and rebellious mindset no longer really exist. That to me makes it attractive.
Okay.
Insightful reason on that. Some other little background bits. Talking more about the film again. In university, just before shooting this film, I made a 10-minute short with some other students. I directed it because I noticed most of the others didn't think seriously about the idea of directing. They were there to learn how to act, how to shoot, or other more directly technical aspects of filmmaking. But to me it was very serious, so there was a clear difference in our state of mind. They didn't work very seriously on that project and it annoyed me, so sometimes I felt like I wanted to kill the other students, especially when I was all alone in the editing room trying to work everything out. Some of that bled into my premise for Kichiku. Kichiku is in a way a very personal film to me. I liberated my own desires for violence and anger and tried to open the inside of my mind to let all of that poison out. And I think it's all there in the film. In some ways it made me feel ashamed of myself, like I was the worst person in the world to be able to even think of or come up with those things. To which Tom asked him, is it hard to be that honest to yourself? And he said, I had a lot of anger at the time when making the film. I had been with my girlfriend for 1 year at that point, and just before we started filming, we broke up. So I was feeling very depressed and angry going into production. And many of those emotions, I think, bled into the film. It's a film that I can now never sit back and watch calmly, which I thought that was interesting. But when the film was screened at festivals later, I had to watch the film too, and in that situation, I was able to pull back a little and look at it with more composure and see it just as a film. It struck me only as a film as being very strange and unique. But every time I watched it, I would still get back the feelings I had at that time when I made it. And so I decided I eventually wanted to make another film about those feelings, and that became Hole in the Sky. One of his other movies. And then they get into talking a little bit about the violence, right? Because that's kind of what this film is famous for, is the violence and the gore. And it's one of those ones where they say, like, oh, it's the final, 20, 15 minutes or whatever. That's like, it just gets crazy. Mm-hmm. And he says, I think you can say it's a violent film. Of course, the film is not just about the violence, but it's certainly there. If they think promoting it as a violent film will help make people see it, then I don't mind if they do that. And I think this is in reference to the DVD release that you have. They kind of put it out as like an exploitation horror film.
Extreme and everything.
Yeah, extreme Asia, that whole vibe. But then he goes on to say, but the people who went to see it purely because it's a violent film, when they see one of my other films like Hole in the Sky, they will think that I changed so much in between. But that's not really true, and I don't mind that. But of course, I appreciate people like you that notice the similarities between these films. And they talk a little bit about the title. Kichiku, it kind of, and if you translate that, it refers to like inhuman. It's kind of like the word you would use.
Yeah.
And he said of the title, when I was editing the film, I had so much anger, and I suddenly had this idea for the title, Kichiku Dai Inkai. The annotation when you say it is very powerful and very impressive. Dai Inkai. The thought just came to me suddenly. It's like a copywriter finding the idea. The sound is good, it's impressive, it's stuck in my brain, and when you said it, it just felt right.
Yeah, it's a good title.
And sometimes I like that idea. There's the French idea of like le mot juste.
Yeah.
That there's like the right word to use when you're composing something.
The most perfect word. Yeah.
And then this is like the last part I want to read because it amused me a lot. But they were talking a little bit about like, okay, so this was your graduation project, and most people would probably make like, a short film or like a little documentary about like a topic they care about. And they asked him, you made this film, so what was that about? And he said, my teacher in university was Sadao Nakajima, who's a famous director. But I didn't respect him, and his films are not the kind of films that I like at all. So at first I wanted to make a film that was very different from his, just to make him angry and to rebel. And also the other students made these very cute love stories, and I thought they were so boring. So I wanted to make a very different, unique film that would stand out from all the rest.
Nice.
And I would say decidedly, he probably did that.
Yep.
Among that class. Without a doubt.
Definitely.
That's all my little extra bits. I'll put a link to that interview if you want to go read the whole thing. There's some other cool stuff in there, but I don't want to just sit here and read a whole interview.
No. Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, shall I start then since it was my movie?
Sure, go ahead. What do you think of this film?
Yeah, I bought this back when there was a whole explosion of Asian movies available.
Do you remember off the top of your head what releasing company put it out, or?
I do not know.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
There was a bunch back then.
Arts Magic, maybe?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know them.
It says Arts Magic DVD. So it wasn't like the Tartan Extreme or whatever that was.
It would have fit there perfectly.
But it was a good time because we were getting a nice influx of after the success of The Ring and stuff like that, we were getting some good...
The Extreme.
Yeah. And I just picked it up blindly.
Huh.
It was at Best Buy. Like, oh, this looks fun. It's Japanese, looks gory. Cool, I'm down.
It was that title. Dai in Kai.
Yeah. Got it, watched it, liked it. Didn't love it. Mm-hmm. But it always kind of stuck with me, in the back of my head. And I don't think I've rewatched it until for this.
Wow.
So it's been damn near 20 years.
A long time to sit on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's held up pretty well. I enjoy it a lot. I love its documentary-like style. I'm always a sucker for that. The whole cinema verite thing. I think the actors do a great job being inexperienced. They just really going for it and are crazy and nuts.
So I thought you would really like it because it has a very 70s feel.
Oh, yeah. It does a good job of capturing that 70s feel. Mm-hmm. It's shot on 60 millimeter. It's got the whole 4:3 ratio. So it already sort of looks like an old documentary anyway.
Yeah.
Good gore effects, for the budget and stuff.
What they can't do, they don't show. Which is smart.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole theme of the movie to me is just that whole, because they are these radical leftists who have these extreme ideas that we don't even hear about. They're not bothering. They're not even talking about their beliefs. It's all about just controlling one another, and it's like they're just existing, and it's they're like justifying their kind of sad, meager existence because of these beliefs they propose to hold. They're choosing to live this way because of their beliefs, whereas I think it's the other way around. And there's the whole cult of personality thing, like how they worship Aizawa, and we don't know why, because we only see him in prison, and he seems defeated and broken.
We never get like what he said to convince them all or any of that.
Masami isn't that particularly charismatic. She's female. She's the only female in the group.
Yeah.
These losers have sex with her, so I guess she's got that much power over them. It's just a bunch of people who kind of hate themselves and each other, I think, finally just imploding. And I think that is a, nice metaphor for where the human race is headed.
Okay. So this was another in this year of our Lord
right.
picks, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it holds up pretty well, especially for a student film. It's just not a lot of people know about this movie. It's kind of a minor little thing, but I think it's fun. I give it 3.5 stars. I don't think it's a classic. I don't think it's something like, oh my God, you've got to see this. But if you dig that sort of a movie, like you said, the whole kind of Wes Craven, Last House on the Left sort of feel, which is also very much documentary-like. If you dig that, you'll dig this.
Cool.
So what did you think?
So I wasn't as keen on it as you. I think.
Okay, that's fair.
I get that we don't really need their politics for it to work.
I think that's the point.
But that bothered me about it. That it was like, it's about this political group, but you don't get any of their politics. And they're committing crimes that you don't get into any of how that's going on. It's like, it's about these things that it's not really depicting. What it's really about is just like a snapshot of their life, which is fine, but I found it often dull and too slow and too drawn out and a little too boring. Especially a lot of the like scenes of them eating, and it would kind of just spin around the room, and it's just like,
I think that reinforces the whole banality of it all, though.
I guess, but I don't know.
Please continue.
It never hooked me with like oh, that's clever, you're doing this kind of thing. It kind of just felt like they were just filling out the camera reel time that they had or something, and then it's like so much of it is like, why are they following her? And then when it flips, it seems to flip for no reason, and it's just a lot of like, what are the motivations of these characters, and like why are they doing the things that they're doing? And there's no characterization to explain that, but it's also not in a way where it's weird for like a compelling way. Like right when you watch a David Lynch film, and it's like, I'm calling you from your house right now, and Lost Highway, and you're like, the fuck is going on? But like it compels you. And it's like you are intrigued and want to know. And none of this like intrigued me in that way. It was just like...
I agree. Kumakiri is not David Lynch.
I'm not like just making that comparison to trash it. I'm just giving that example of like...
Right.
I never got the hook that like grabbed me to be like,
okay,
I need to ponder this film deeply to understand it. It kind of felt to me like it was really just about like building to that moment of the extreme like super violence. And it takes so long to get there. And then you get there and it happens, and that part's great. I think that's well played, and like you said, the effects are awesome. What they show is really well done, especially for the budget. What they don't show, this dude's being smart. Kumakiri knows what he's doing.
Right.
He knows that I can't ever pull this off, so I need to like frame around it, suggest it, do what I can to make it work for the narrative without putting something stupid on the screen,
right,
or something like that. So I have a lot of respect for that, and I think that's cool. But yeah, I just found it really dull and really just kind of like, a lot of the time I was watching it, I was just like, why? But why though?
Okay.
And I think And in some ways, it made me think of this other film, and it was like a kind of like a reverse negative comparison. Takashi Hirose's Brutal from 2017.
I hadn't seen that one. I've heard of it.
It's a kind of more recently acclaimed Japanese extreme horror film. It's super lean. It's like barely an hour. Mm-hmm. And it has some big ideas, but it's like pew, 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 gets through it all, gets to like the big uber gore scene, and then you're out.
Okay.
And I feel like that's the pacing that this needed.
All right.
Because instead you were just stewing for a long time, but like there was no idea to stew on. You were just there.
Okay.
So I actually gave this 1 star, to be honest.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Man, I have a cult Japanese film that I'm like, oh, Dustin will like this.
And as you were giving your review there, I almost was tempted to bump my score up.
Oh, I almost persuaded you.
I liked a few of the things you said, but I'm going to keep it at 1 so that this can stand forever as a testament and let it never be said that I just irrationally overrate Japanese films.
Oh, okay.
Because they are Japanese films.
It would be one I pick, but okay.
I can dislike them. And here is one.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
No disrespect to Kumakiri. It was a valiant effort on his part, and it didn't work for me, but it works for other people like you, Jason, which is awesome. And I'm still probably going to check out #manhole if I can find it somewhere.
Yeah, I love that premise.
Pretty cool into that. Oh, and I do want to mention one thing. There was another director this film also made me think of that I should put out there for connecting points. Made me think of some of the films of Koji Wakamatsu.
Not familiar.
He's come up in some of our discussions of Pinku. He's made some popular ones like Ecstasy of Angels or Go Go Second Time Virgin.
Yeah.
Just some of the sex moments in this film, and then the like shift to violence.
Oh, okay.
I kind of caught some vibes there. So that's another direction you can run down with this movie.
Interesting.
But otherwise, there you have it.
All right.
Two widely different takes on the one film.
It's disappointing.
Check it out for yourself. See what you think.
Let us know.
And let us know. Yeah. Even Letterboxd, I checked, and they were pretty divided on this. There were a lot of 5 stars, and there were a lot of 1 stars.
Oh, it's not a 5-star movie. It's not a 5-star movie. It's a good movie, in my opinion. Not a great movie, and not a terrible movie. I think you're being hard. I think you might revisit this one day, like Saint Maud, and be like, you know what? I was a little harsh.
Here's my guarantee. I'll always retract my review if I change my mind.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
I'm always open to rediscover, reevaluate. There you go.
All right. I like an open mind. All right, man. So the next pick is yours, I believe.
It is. And I am so fucking torn.
Oh, God.
So I didn't know where to go with this. And then I kind of had this thought of like, I have a film in my back pocket that I've been holding since we started the show.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, Jason pulled one of his out, and I really fucking hated it. I kind of think you might hate this film. And I'm like, is this the time for it? I don't know.
Haven't you punished me enough?
And I've kind of gone back and forth on it, and I thought it's almost too perfect now because in some ways I miss our little like theme blocks at times. And I thought this film in some ways is complementary to the themes of Banquet of Blood, as it also has to do with like political stuff that went on in like the 60s and 70s in Japan. And it's also one that I've kept in the back pocket that I've mentioned teasingly before about it being really fucking weird, and that I thought that it's maybe alienating to watch, and I wondered how you and Michael would react to it.
Okay.
But for those connections, and because it's about politics, and I thought, Alex Garland's dropping Civil War.
Right.
That's hitting theaters now. We're in an election year. I think it's time. I think this is the universe saying, Dustin, now is the time to pull this trigger, and let's see what happens.
Okay. What you got?
So we are going to be checking out from 1970, directed by Yoshishige Yoshida, Heroic Purgatory.
Heroic Purgatory.
Yes, and now this is the second part of sort of like a trilogy, and they're not connected. It's more of like a thematic trilogy.
Uh-oh, this looks artsy.
It is kind of artsy. Let me find out, because there was Arrow put out a cool box set called Love and Anarchism, and it was like a collection of 3 of his films. And this is the middle of those. It is streaming on the Arrow player. So you're good to go, Jason.
That's something.
Otherwise, I think you have to rent it, so it's out there. You can get at it.
Okay.
It's like a $4 rental on Amazon Prime, but if you got Arrow, you're good to go. Or if you're like me, you own the Blu-ray.
Of course.
I'll just hit you with the synopsis, just to orient you a little bit. Rikiya Shoda is an engineer working for the Atomic Agency in Japan. One day, his wife Nanako returns home with a lost teenager called Ayu. A man pretending to be the father comes to get her back. Ayu keeps telling him that Rikiya and Nanako are her parents. Through the disruption, Rikiya suddenly starts remembering his youth as a revolutionary.
This is either going to be great or suck.
You were either going to give this film 5 stars or you were going to give it 1 star. And I'm curious to see what happens.
I'll save you the trouble. 1 star. Fuck you.
We'll see. I'm going to say, dare I say it, this film's a little Lynchian.
Okay. I had a feeling.
We'll see.
Given some of the images I just saw.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see what happens.
Cool. All right. I look forward to it.
And you, dear listeners, can come along with us on this journey, and we will see what happens. And it'll all be okay, I promise. Because at the end of the day, after that next episode, we're going to do another listener episode, which you can give to us.
Ooh.
If you just write in and tell us. We do them between every sets of episodes that we cover, because we value what you want us to see too.
Yeah, make us watch something.
Make us watch something cool. Give us a weird, surreally, out there, trippy movie. I want more of those. I went looking and I was like, dude, I've seen them all though.
I'm sure there's more out there.
There's always more, and we need you, listener, to help us. Send them in. Or anything. We'll watch whatever. We'll watch Return to Camp Fart Blood or whatever those shitty movies are.
No.
No?
Yeah, you're right. I would. Give me a few beers. Just please no romantic comedies. I've said that before and I fucking mean it. Ugh.
I wait for the day.
Ugh.
But yeah, you can hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Email us at genreexposure@gmail.com. If it's about movies, we'll listen to whatever you got to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do want your suggestions.
We do, absolutely.
Otherwise, you have been listening to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.